Welcome, champions, to the next overview and tier list ranking, featuring the newest champion. This is where we'll break down their mechanics and place them in my overall tier list for every champion in the game. So let's talk about Wyll, the neutral good human warlock in Seat 12, and the newest addition to the absolute adversaries. As you may know by now, that means he's coming with a slimy tadpole wiggling around inside his brain, and originating from the now award-winning RPG Baldur's Gate 3. The Blade of Frontiers, his heroic moniker, will serve your group as a support. His basic attack will have him move up to the closest enemy, stab it for a hit, then slap it with an Eldritch Blast cantrip for a hit and a short distance knockback. His ultimate ability will summon Mizora, his warlock patron, empowering him for 15 seconds. For that duration, his normal attack cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds, and his base attacks will additionally deal ultimate damage. His main formation ability, which he focuses on increasing through various means, is his background, Folk Hero, where he increases the damage of all champions that belong to the most represented race, class, or affiliations in the formation. If there is a tie between these, all tied groups gain the buff, and any champions that are a part of multiple groups can gain the buff multiple times, stacking multiplicatively. This can be a bit of a tricky one to get stacked right, because you'll want your DPS to be a part of the most represented race, class, and affiliation. And depending on restrictions and what you have available to work with, it might become a tad difficult to do. And note, the max stack is 4, but we're only talking about race, class, and affiliation. 3 things. Well, there are a few champions who belong to multiple affiliations, like Strix being a part of both the Waffle Crew and Acquisitions Incorporated. If you make sure both of those affiliations are equal and the most represented, you will get 2 stacks out of the affiliation. The same can be said about classes for those who are, say, both a fighter and a rogue, and fighter and rogue are the most represented class, or those with feats, especially the new glitch feats, which can offer an additional race on top of the base race of a champion. And of course, him being from the absolute adversaries, that means he's coming with another stack of Ceremorphosis, which in turn makes the rest of his affiliation better as they scale with how many Ceremorphosis stacks are active in your formation. In Wyll's case, directly increasing the effect of Folk Hero. However, with Wyll's release also comes 2 new feats for old Heroes of Baldur's Gate champions, Imoen and Viconia, which gives them a Ceremorphosis stack, much like Narak's feat from the Emergence rewards. So we now have a potential of 7 stacks between the 3 feated Narak, Imoen, and Viconia, and the members directly of the absolute adversaries we have so far: Lae'zel, Astarion, Shadowheart, and now Wyll. He also further boosts Folk Hero with Bravado, where each time an enemy or distraction is defeated, he will increase the effect of Folk Hero, stacking multiplicatively up to 10 times, until the area changes. While I generally don't like on-kill mechanics, since distractions don't spawn everywhere, he does counter this with a new type of feat he has access to, Distracting Imps, where he will force imp distractions to spawn regardless of the area. So you can always have access to distractions to kill. This also makes him very useful for any type of quest you might get between patrons in seasons that involves distractions, now guaranteeing a way to spawn them wherever you are. While Folk Hero might be his main source of damage buffing, he also gets a Heartless contract, where fiends become Wyll's favorite foes, granting all champions a lesser amount of increased damage against his favorite foes. All of his specialization choices focus on making Folk Hero a girthy buff for your formation to work with, represented by his Warlock Pacts. Pact of the Blade will increase the effect of Folk Hero by 200% on champions with a melee base attack. Pact of the Chain will increase the effect of Folk Hero by 10% for each familiar assigned to his party, stacking multiplicatively. It might look low at first, but with how many familiars can be assigned to a standard formation, 6 on the field, 1 on auto progress, 12 on your champion's levels, 1 on click damage, 10 for active ultimate activation, and 4 roaming the random ultimate activation. meaning a potential total of 34. Altogether, this makes for a large bonus. Then we have Pact of the Tome, which increases the effect by 25% for each champion in the formation with a magical base attack, stacking multiplicatively. At the end of the day, if you have the familiars to spare, Pact of the Chain will always grant the biggest boost. His equipment and feats are decent, having an equipment slot for all damage, one for Folk Hero, Ceramorphosis, Bravado, and his specializations to make Folk Hero scale very well, and then one for ultimate cooldown. He has some interesting choices in feats as well. What you'd find standard for increasing all damage, Folk Hero, Ceramorphosis, Bravado, specializations, but also things like his unique distraction feat, and also potentially adding Undead and Construct to his favorite foe list for a Heartless contract. Undead in particular is interesting, since Viconia now has synergy with the absolute adversaries, and will be consistently spawning Undead for your formation to fight. So let's talk about his event, Wintershield. This year we have the stars aligning in synergy with Ceramorphic options of Wyll, Imoen, and Viconia. A solid 3 options considering. But if we're looking for specifically who you might want to focus on out of the bunch, Wyll offers the most potential in raw buffing, followed by Imoen, then Viconia. They all have unique mechanics as well. Wyll having the feat to spawn distractions, Imoen being able to turn enemies into beasts, dragons, monstrosities, and most importantly for her further synergy with the absolute adversaries, aberrations, which Lae'zel scales off of, and Viconia being able to force spawning undead. Long live Baldur's Gate of any generation. As usual, do your best to full epic everyone, and remember that it is Viconia's last year before she is retired to only being available through time gates. So what about his achievement and adventure variants? His achievement takes some thought, but once you set it up, it is very easy. You need to complete 100 areas while Folk Hero is active on 10 champions, or a standard formation. So make sure you have a healthy mix of races, classes, and affiliations, or just say screw it and do 100 areas with a team of 10 humans. His variants are pretty standard, being able to be moved but not removed in all of them. The first will only have those from your most represented race, class, and affiliation deal damage, which you will want to have your DPS qualify for anyway while using Wyll to benefit from his Folk Hero. Quite simple. The second forces Squidly in a formation slot, and each wave will spawn an additional fiend to focus on his favorite foe, which does not drop gold or count toward quest progression. Very simple, just having to work around the -1 slot. The third focuses on his specialization choices, only allowing those with a melee or magic attack, with the exception of Astarion, to be used, and only allowing champions with a familiar assigned to level them up the ability to deal damage. So make sure you have your DPS being leveled up by a familiar at all times. All of them should be pretty easy for everyone to complete. His availability is actually great, being available for 3 of the 4 patrons naturally, but has a strength feat to counter that, so 4 of 4 with a feat, while also being available for every day 1 trials restriction. His damage buff is girthy when set up right, but does take a bit of finagling to get the minimum of all 3 on your DPS, but when you do, it's a good payoff. I'm putting him in the A tier along with Shadowheart, and Astarion and Lae'zel are scooching up to Imoen, their new Ceramorphic partner in aberration slaying. Thanks for checking the video out. Leave a comment on what you think of Wyll, and have a Merry Christmas. And always remember, have a hell of a time out there, champion.